The police officer stared at the small, dirty shoelace lying near the back door. It looked old. It looked useless. Everyone else had already walked past it. But he didn't move. Because that tiny clue did not belong to the victim. And if it didn't belong to her, then someone else had been there that night. Someone no one had noticed. Someone the whole country believed did not exist. The officer slowly reached down, his hand shaking just a little, and picked it up. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment this case, the one people called the murder that shocked America, took a dark turn no one expected. Because the truth hiding behind that one small clue was far worse than anyone imagined. And just as the officer opened his mouth to speak, a loud noise came from upstairs. 3 days earlier, everything had seemed normal. Emma Carter lived in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes in the street and neighbors waved every morning. Emma was 32 years old. She worked as a nurse. People liked her. She smiled a lot and helped others. To everyone around her, she had a simple, happy life. But on a cold Tuesday morning, that changed. Emma didn't show up for work. At first, her co-workers thought she was sick. It happened sometimes. But when she didn't answer her phone all day, they started to worry. By evening, her best friend, Sarah Mitchell, drove to Emma's house. The front yard looked normal. The lights were off. Sarah knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. That's when she noticed the door was slightly open. Just a little. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Emma!" she called softly, pushing the door open. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She stepped inside. Everything looked off. A chair was knocked over. A glass was broken on the floor. There was a strange smell in the air. "Emma!" she called again, her voice shaking now. Then she saw it. And she screamed. The police arrived minutes later. The house quickly filled with flashing lights, officers, and crime scene tape. News spread fast. Within hours, people across the country were hearing about it. Emma Carter had been murdered in her own home. There were no signs of forced entry. No clear suspect. No witnesses. It didn't make sense. Detective James Walker was put on the case. He had seen many crimes before, but this one felt different the moment he stepped inside. Something about it was wrong. He walked slowly through the house, studying every detail. The broken glass. The overturned chair. The silence. Then he noticed something strange. The back door was unlocked. But Emma always locked her doors. Everyone knew that. He stepped closer, looking carefully at the floor. That's when he saw it. A faint mark in the dust. Like something had been dragged. Or someone had been pulled. His heart began to beat faster. "Check upstairs," he told another officer. The officer nodded and started toward the stairs. Each step creaked loudly in the quiet house. 1 step. 2 steps. 3 steps. Then, a sudden loud crash came from above. And a voice shouted, "Detective! You need to see this now!" Detective James Walker didn't hesitate. He ran up the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding hard in his chest. The hallway upstairs was dark, and the air felt heavy, like something bad was still hiding there. "Over here!" the officer called again, his voice tight. James rushed into the bedroom. At first, it looked normal. The bed was made. The curtains were closed. But then he saw the closet door. It was open. Slowly, carefully, James stepped closer. Inside the closet, clothes were pushed to one side. And behind them, there was a small space. Too small for most people to notice. But not empty. "There's someone hiding in there," the officer whispered. James felt a cold chill run through him. "Come out," he shouted, his voice strong but controlled. No answer. "Come out now," he said again, louder this time. Still nothing. The officer raised his flashlight and pointed it into the dark space. And then, a man slowly crawled out. He looked pale. His face was sweaty. His eyes moved quickly, like he was scared. "I didn't do anything," the man said right away, raising his hands. James narrowed his eyes. Then why are you hiding in a dead woman's closet? The man swallowed hard. I came here this morning. The door was open. I thought something was wrong, so I went inside. Then I heard sirens, and I got scared. That's your story? James asked. The man nodded quickly. Yes. I didn't hurt her. I swear. The officers quickly placed him in handcuffs. As they led him out of the house, neighbors stood outside watching. Some whispered. Others stared in shock. Within minutes, the news spread again. A suspect has been found. But James wasn't convinced. Something didn't feel right. Back at the police station, the man sat in a small room. His name was Daniel Brooks. He was 27 years old and worked at a local gas station. James sat across from him, watching closely. "Tell me everything again," James said calmly. Daniel nodded nervously. "I was walking past the house this morning. I noticed the door was open. I thought maybe something was wrong, so I went inside." "And instead of calling the police, you hid in a closet?" James asked. Daniel looked down. "I panicked. I didn't know what to do." James leaned back in his chair. "Did you know Emma Carter?" Daniel shook his head fast. "No. Never met her." James studied his face. Every movement. Every blink. Daniel looked scared. But was he scared because he was guilty, or because he was telling the truth? Hours passed. The forensic team worked through the house carefully. They collected fingerprints, checked every room, and looked for anything that didn't belong. That's when the report came in. "No match," one officer said. James looked up. "What do you mean?" "Daniel's fingerprints don't match anything important at the scene. Nothing that connects him to the murder." James frowned. "So he was telling the truth?" another officer asked. James didn't answer right away. Instead, he remembered something. The back door. Unlocked. The strange mark on the floor. And then, that small, dirty shoelace he had picked up earlier. "Run this," James said, holding it up. The officer looked at it. "A shoelace. Just do it." Later that night, the results came back. James stood still as he read the report. His eyes widened. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered. The DNA on the shoelace didn't belong to Emma. It didn't belong to Daniel either. Which meant one thing. There was someone else in that house. Someone they had completely missed. Someone who had left behind just one tiny clue. And vanished. James slowly looked up. "If Daniel didn't do it," he said quietly, "then where is the real killer?" Before anyone could answer, a loud alarm suddenly rang through the station. An officer burst into the room, out of breath. "Detective," he shouted. "You need to come see this right now." James turned quickly. "What happened?" The officer hesitated for just a second. Then he said something that made the entire room go silent. "We just got a call from Emma Carter's phone." The room went completely silent. Detective James Walker froze for a second, staring at the officer like he had heard something impossible. "That's not funny," one officer said nervously. "I'm not joking," the officer replied. "Dispatch just confirmed it. The call came in less than a minute ago." James grabbed his jacket. "Play it." They rushed into the control room. A technician pressed a button, and the recording began. At first, there was only static. Then, a faint sound. Breathing. Slow. Uneven. Like someone trying not to be heard. James leaned closer. "Hello," a dispatcher's voice said from the recording. "This is 911. What is your emergency?" For a few seconds, nothing. Then a whisper. So quiet they almost missed it. "Help me." The room went cold. "That's her," one officer whispered. "That sounds like Emma." James didn't speak. His eyes stayed locked on the speaker. "Ma'am, can you tell us where you are?" the dispatcher asked. There was a pause. Then, a sudden loud bang. The line went dead. "No way," another officer said, shaking his head. "That's not possible. We found her. We know she's..." He didn't finish the sentence. James turned sharply. "Trace the call." "No." The technician nodded quickly, typing fast. Seconds felt like minutes. Finally, he looked up. "I got it." "Where?" James asked. The technician hesitated. "It's coming from her house." 15 minutes later, police cars rushed back to Emma Carter's home. The lights flashed red and blue across the quiet street again. Neighbors stepped outside, whispering in fear. "This can't be real," one officer said as they approached the front door. James didn't answer. He pushed the door open. The house was just as they left it. Quiet. Still. Empty. Or at least it looked that way. "Spread out," James ordered. Officers moved carefully through each room. Living room clear. Kitchen clear. Bathroom clear. James stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up. His chest felt tight. "Upstairs," he said. The stairs creaked again as they climbed. Step by step. Slow. Careful. The hallway was dark, just like before. The bedroom door was slightly open. James pushed it gently. Nothing had changed. The bed. The curtains. The closet. All the same. But something felt wrong. "Check everywhere," James said quietly. Officers searched the room again. Under the bed. Behind the curtains. Inside the closet. Nothing. "Sir, there's no one here," one officer said. James clenched his jaw. "That call came from this house," he said. "We're missing something." He turned slowly, looking around the room again. Every detail. Every corner. Then his eyes stopped. The floor. Near the closet. He walked over slowly. There it was again. That faint mark. Like something had been dragged. But this time, he noticed something new. A small scratch on the wooden floor. Right at the edge of the wall. James crouched down, his heart racing. He ran his fingers along the wall. Tap, 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 then a different sound. "Hello." James looked up. "Move back," he said. An officer handed him a tool. James pressed against the wall and pushed. At first, nothing happened. Then, a soft click. And suddenly, a small section of the wall shifted. The officers stepped back in shock as a hidden door slowly opened. Behind it, darkness. Cold air rushed out. And from deep inside, came a sound. A weak voice. "Barely there. Please." James grabbed his flashlight and stepped closer. What he saw next made his blood run cold. There was a narrow space behind the wall. And inside it, someone was moving. But before he could reach them, a loud noise echoed from inside the hidden passage. Fast footsteps. Running away. James shouted, "Stop!" and took off into the darkness. Detective James Walker ran into the darkness without thinking. The narrow passage behind the wall was tight and cold. The air smelled damp, like it had been closed off for years. His flashlight shook slightly in his hand as the beam of light bounced off the walls. "Stop!" he shouted again. But the footsteps ahead only got faster. Heavy. Quick. Desperate. Whoever was running knew this place well. "Block the exits!" James yelled behind him. Officers quickly spread out, trying to find another way in. But James kept going. The passage turned sharply to the left. Then right. Then down a small set of wooden steps. Each step creaked loudly. His heart pounded harder. He turned another corner. And suddenly stopped. The passage split into two. Left. Or right. The footsteps were gone. Only silence remained. James held his breath, listening. Nothing. No movement. No sound. It was like the person had vanished into thin air. "Detective!" a voice called from behind. Other officers were catching up. "They split the path," James said quickly. "We go both ways." 2 officers went left. James took the right. The right passage was even narrower. James had to turn his body sideways to move forward. The walls felt cold against his arms. Drip, drip. Water echoed somewhere far away. Then, a sound. Very soft. like someone crying. James froze. He slowly raised his flashlight. "Police," he said gently. "You're safe. Come out." The crying stopped. For a moment, everything went quiet again. Then, a weak voice. "Please, don't leave me." James followed the voice, moving faster now. The passage opened into a small hidden room. And there, curled up in the corner, was a young woman. Her hands were shaking. Her clothes were dirty. Her face was pale. But she was alive. James felt a wave of shock hit him. Hey, it's okay," he said softly, kneeling down. "You're safe now." The woman looked up at him, tears in her eyes. He said no one would find me," she whispered. James swallowed hard. "Who?" Before she could answer, a loud gunshot echoed from somewhere deep in the passage. Bang! James turned instantly. "Stay here," he told her. He rushed back into the tunnel. On the other side, the officers who went left were running. "Suspect spotted," one of them shouted into the radio. The man was fast. He pushed through another hidden door and burst out into the backyard behind Emma's house. Fresh air hit him as he ran. He didn't look back. "Stop!" an officer yelled, chasing after him. But the man kept running. He jumped over a fence, landed hard, kept going. Police sirens grew louder in the distance. Lights flashed. Neighbors screamed. Everything was chaos. The man reached the end of the street, and suddenly stopped. Right in front of him, a police car blocked the road. He turned quickly. Another car behind him. He was trapped. Slowly, he raised his hands. Officers rushed forward, forcing him to the ground and placing him in handcuffs. "It's over," one officer said. But as they pulled him up, he started laughing. Not normal laughter. Cold. Strange. Like he knew something they didn't. "You're too late," he said quietly. Back inside the house, James helped the young woman out of the hidden room. She could barely walk. "Who did this to you?" he asked again. Her lips trembled. He wasn't alone," she whispered. James froze. "What do you mean?" Tears rolled down her face. "There were two of them." James felt his stomach drop. "Two?" He turned sharply toward the passage. If there were two, then who did they just catch? And more importantly, where was the second one? Before he could say anything, the lights inside the house suddenly went out. Everything went completely dark. And from somewhere inside the house, a floorboard creaked. The house went completely dark. For a second, no one moved. No one breathed. Then, creak. A slow step from somewhere inside the house. Detective James Walker's heart started pounding again. He gently pulled the young woman closer behind him. "Stay right here," he whispered. Another creak. Closer this time. Someone was inside. Someone who hadn't been caught. James reached for his flashlight and switched it on. The beam cut through the darkness, shaking slightly as he moved it across the hallway. "Police!" he shouted. "Come out now." No answer. Only silence. Then, a sudden loud crash from the living room. Glass shattered. "Move!" James yelled. Officers rushed forward. James ran toward the sound, his shoes hitting the floor hard. He turned the corner and saw a shadow moving fast toward the front door. "Stop!" he shouted. The shadow didn't stop. It slammed into the door and burst outside. James chased after them. Outside, the cold night air hit his face. The street lights flickered. The figure ran across the yard, fast and desperate. James pushed himself harder. "You're not getting away," he shouted. The figure reached the sidewalk and tripped, falling hard onto the ground. Before they could get back up, James was already there. He pinned them down. "Don't move," he said firmly. The person struggled for a second, then went still. Officers rushed in and helped pull the suspect up. As the light hit their face, James froze. It was a woman. Young, maybe late 20s. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Not scared. Not confused. Calm. Too calm. Turn around, an officer ordered, placing her in handcuffs. She didn't fight. Didn't speak. Just smiled. A small, cold smile. Back at the station, both suspects were placed in separate rooms. The man they caught outside earlier, his name was Tyler Reed. The woman, her name was Chloe Bennett. James stood in the observation room, watching them both through the glass. Two suspects, an officer said. Just like she said. James nodded slowly. But something still didn't sit right. Bring Chloe in, he said. Chloe sat across from him, her hands cuffed to the table. She looked relaxed. Almost like she had been waiting for this moment. James leaned forward. Emma Carter, he said. Why did you kill her? Chloe tilted her head slightly. We didn't kill her, she said calmly. James's eyes narrowed. That's not a game you want to play. Chloe smiled again. You're still missing it, she said softly. James felt a chill run through him. Missing what? Chloe leaned in just a little. The clue, she whispered. James's mind raced. The clue. The shoelace. The hidden room. The second victim. Something clicked. He stood up quickly and rushed out of the room. Minutes later, he was back at the house again. Officers followed behind him, confused. Detective, what is it? One asked. James didn't answer. He went straight upstairs. Straight to the closet. Straight to the hidden passage. Check everything again, he ordered. They searched every inch. Every wall. Every corner. Then, sir, an officer called. James rushed over. There, near the floor of the hidden room, was another shoelace. Same as the first one. Same dirt. Same wear. James's eyes widened. 2 shoelaces, he whispered. Then it hit him. Slowly. Clearly. Like a puzzle finally coming together. This wasn't just a break-in, he said. This wasn't random. He turned to the officers. They planned this for a long time. Back at the station, the truth finally came out. Chloe and Tyler had been working together. But not just for one night. 4 months. They had been watching Emma. Learning her routine. Her habits. Her fears. They broke into her house weeks before the murder. Built the hidden space behind the wall. Waited. And when the night came, they struck. But something went wrong. Emma fought back. Harder than they expected. That's when everything changed. That's when the plan fell apart. And that's when they made a mistake. A small one. A tiny detail. A shoelace. That didn't belong. The clue police almost missed. The clue that exposed everything. Days later, the story spread across the country. People couldn't believe it. A hidden room. 2 killers. A plan that almost worked. They called it the murder that shocked America. But for Detective James Walker, it was something else. It was a reminder that sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden in the smallest details. And sometimes the truth is right in front of you, waiting to be seen.